话之，迈克尔桑德尔教授系列讲座第1讲，基因工程的伦理，主讲人迈克尔桑德尔。现在开始上课。
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's event. And my name is Yuzhou Wang. I'm an assistant professor in the philosophy department at Peking University. And it is both my privilege and honor to serve as the moderator for this evening's event. And this will be the first lecture of Professor Michael Sandel's distinguished lecture series here at Peking University. And the focus of this evening's discussion is a profoundly important and timely topic, the ethics of genetic engineering. So before we proceed, allow me to introduce our esteemed speaker and panelist for tonight. So our speaker, Michael Sandel, is a professor of government at Harvard University. He has served on the President's Council on Bioethics and is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. His course, Justice, is the first Harvard course to be made freely available online and on television, has been viewed by tens of millions of people around the world. His writings on justice, ethics, democracy, and markets have been translated into more than 30 languages. Sandel's books relate enduring themes of political philosophy to the most vexing moral and civic questions of our time. They include the tyranny of merit, can we find common good, democracy's discontent, a new edition for our previous times, what money can't buy, the moral limits of markets, justice, what's the right thing to do, the case against perfection, ethics in the age of genetic engineering, public philosophy, essays on morals in politics, and liberalism and the limits of justice. Joining us as our panelist this evening is Professor Han Shuifa, a distinguished scholar in the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies at Peking University. Professor Han also serves as the chairman of the academic committee of the Department of Philosophy at Peking University and the director of the Institute of Foreign Philosophy at Peking University. His main research areas include Kantian philosophy and political philosophy, Weberian theory, and Chinese language philosophy. His major works include a study on Kant's doctrine of things in themselves, Weber, university, and academia, the vision of justice, and critical metaphysics. So the structure for tonight's talk will be as follows. So first, Professor Sandel will deliver a 60-minute lecture, followed by a 30-minute panel discussion with Professor Han Shuifa. And then we will open the floor for a 30-minute Q&A. So, and also during the Q&A, please formulate your question in English because we do not have a translator during the Q&A. And after that, we will end after the Q&A, and just to let you know, there will not be a photo taking or signing time because it will be very late, and Professor Michael Sandel will need to have some rest. So that's the introduction for tonight's event. And without further ado, let's welcome our speaker, Professor Michael Sandel.
Well, thank you, Professor Huang, for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for coming, and to all of those who are watching on the live stream. Our subject tonight is the ethics of genetic engineering. Those of you who are here with us in this beautiful hall, I'm going to invite you to join me in a discussion of the ethics of genetic engineering. Those who are watching on the live stream will, we don't have a way of hearing what you think, but that means that those of you who are present in person will have to take the responsibility on behalf of all of the people who are watching on the live stream to offer your opinions and to engage in the discussion of these questions. Are you, those of you sitting here, are you prepared to do that? Yes? Are you sure you won't be shy? No? Okay. In that case, let's begin. This is the first of 3 lectures, and they're on different subjects. Tonight, the ethics of genetic engineering. Tomorrow night, the ethics of AI. And the final lecture on Wednesday night on meritocracy. But you may notice that running through these 3 different topics will be some common philosophical questions and themes that perhaps we can discuss, whether tonight or as the other topics and the other discussions develop and unfold. Tonight, the question I would like to pose to you for discussion is this: should new genetic technologies, including CRISPR and gene editing technologies, be used only for medical purposes, to repair injury, for example, to restore people to health? Or should they also be used for non-medical purposes, to enable athletes to perform better, to run faster, to lift more weight, to bulk up their muscles? Should parents be able to use new genetic technologies to give their children better opportunities in life, to make their children stronger, smarter, happier, better at music or art, if this were possible, have higher IQs? And I'd like to hear what you think about non-medical uses of genetic technologies. And to begin, I would like to get your views on a new proposal for a new version of the Olympic Games. It's called the Enhanced Olympic Games. It's a project that has been launched by some Silicon Valley venture capitalists who want to create their own version of the Olympic Games with no restrictions on the use of performance-enhancing drugs or genetic alteration. The idea is to enable the participants to push the boundaries of human athletic achievement in swimming, in track and field, in weightlifting, in combat, to push the boundaries to see how many world records can be broken if there are no restrictions with regard to either drug or genetic enhancements, performance enhancements. The Enhanced Games is the name of this new project, and the Enhanced Games are scheduled to take place. This is no longer a philosophical hypothetical scenario. The Enhanced Games are scheduled to begin either at the end of this year or early next year. Now, here's our first question. How many are in favor of the Enhanced Games, and how many are opposed? How many like the idea, and how many find it morally troubling? Let's first take a vote to see what people think. How many like the idea? Raise your hand. To push the boundaries of human athletic performance, to break new records? Keep your hands up, those who are in favor. And how many are opposed? Most people here in Centennial Hall are opposed, but a small number of people like the idea, are in favor. So let's begin with those who are in favor of the enhanced games. And do we have microphones so that we can enable? We have one there. Where else? Do we have one over here? Yes? All right. Who will tell us? Yes. Tell us you're in favor. Wait, no, we've got a microphone for you. All right.
So I'm in favor of this game.
Tell us your name.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Alex, and I'm from Foreign Language School. And I'm in favor of this idea because I don't view it as an example for human history. Because, I see it as a opportunity to at least to push the bar,
Yeah.
at least to let us to see the possibility. But
Yes.
it doesn't mean that we need to make it popular. You know, we still have the normal Olympics. It's just another track that led us to see
It's
more.
another track to
Yeah.
see how far
Yeah,
human
especially when you mention the silicon. It may stimulate some business ideas based on
Yeah.
this. So why not? Just like one-time chance.
Yes. And which do you think would be more popular? The enhanced games or the traditional free range, as we might call them, the free range Olympics?
Yeah, I
Which?
think the latter one.
Which?
The enhanced one.
The enhanced, you think, would be more popular?
Yeah, because the competition will be more, exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe, because we can see people swimming faster than fish, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, the trials are not on embryos, they're just on athletes
Right.
and on adults who have informed consent to these, engineering trials. And
They can choose for themselves
yeah,
whether to compete in the enhanced games or in the traditional one.
definitely, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah,
So you've heard Alex has made a pretty strong and vigorous argument in favor of the enhanced games. Who disagrees and can reply to Alex? Yes. Stand up and we'll get you a microphone. Here we are. Over here we have.
Good evening. My opinion is
Wait,
that...
and tell us your name.
I am Nancy.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that with any game, there needs to be restrictions and rules. And if this enhanced sports will turn out to be something like as big as the Olympics, people will gain profit from it. Like there will be media, there will be TV shows, and if there's profit, some people will do anything for the money. And like in China, many athletes, they attend the sport because their family is very poor. So there's no choice. So their families send them to practice sport when they're very young. And if there's this enhanced sports that there's no restrictions to the harm that it has on people, as long as it makes them better athletes, I think that will harm many people who don't have the choice and go for the money.
And so Nancy is opposed and thinks that, and challenges Alex's idea that it's truly a free choice. Because Nancy worries that if there's money to be made, fame and fortune, as there well might be, then many people, especially those from poor families, might be tempted to use performance-enhancing drugs or genetic alterations in order to compete and to make money. And they might feel the pressure, if they're very poor, to take very risky forms of drug or genetic alteration, not because they're making a truly free choice, but because they're really under the pressure to rise from very hard circumstances. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, Alex, what do you say? Let's get the other microphone back to Alex. Do we have more than one? All right, let's have both Nancy and Alex have a microphone.
Okay, thanks. So for
What do you say?
the first point, the restriction or limitation, I think every business has its own restriction. Like it needs time to foster the restriction, at least. It's the same as AI or other emerging technologies.
And what restriction would you place on the enhancements that could be used? Only medically safe ones?
Yeah, maybe.
But if it's about pushing the boundaries, suppose there's a somewhat risky performance-enhancing drug or genetic alteration. We don't know for sure, but some people are willing, Nancy says, to take the chance in order to excel.
Yeah.
In order, you said, to push the boundaries. Whenever we push the boundaries, especially in medical domains, isn't there some risk?
Definitely, there will be.
And what do you say to Nancy's worry that especially those from poor families may feel pressure, even a kind of coercion, to take those risks that other people might not accept?
Yeah, so for me, at least, it's the same situation as you compete in the normal Olympics. It's like, I don't think athletes today, they don't suffer from any risks.
There's risk even in the traditional Olympics because of the rigorous training regimes.
Yeah. In the future, like, it's just their job or their mission to complete. And they have, of course, if the Olympics will be hosted in Silicon, maybe the world will be bigger. They got much more money than the normal Olympics.
Right.
Of course, they need to take the responsibility and they need to bear the risk.
Nancy?
I do see your point, yes. But I think there's a difference between the Olympics now and this kind of enhanced Olympics. Because the Olympics now and the athletes, their training that they're having, although it's very, maybe very harsh, but it's something that normal people and people who have normal genes can copy. And we can try to like act like them, at least a little like them, to like maybe improve our health and enjoy this fun experience of sports. But if it's like enhanced, then there will be like more and more weird people. Maybe first it's like some drugs, but then there will be engineering on their genes, and maybe people will like become different species, like they're not even people.
Well, let's take a concrete example.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Let's follow up that point. To make it concrete, one of the events that they'll have in the enhanced Olympics is swimming. And suppose, to follow your suggestion, Nancy, that there were a genetic alteration that would enable human swimmers to develop webbed feet, like ducks or something, and webbed hands to swim faster. It would alter their genetic makeup. To have webbed hands and feet, that would be an example of the changing of. All right. Now, so shall we put to Alex whether he would permit that?
I will be terrified if I see a man standing in front of me with that wings. And
You will not do that to yourself, right?
so that's why we need limitation to some extent.
But if we're pushing the boundaries of human athletic achievement, and if some people freely choose to have webbed feet and webbed hands to swim faster, what's your objection?
My objection is that it altered the definition of human being. Like, we all have the consensus or collective norm of what a human being should look like.
But
At
why
least
does that include not having webbed hands and feet?
It's like we have 5 fingers and like we have 2 hands and 2 legs. So this is a common sense. Like,
Well, it's tradition,
yeah.
but you're for pushing beyond tradition.
Yeah, so
Or let me give you another example related not to sports but to musical performance and excellence. Suppose there were a very complex piano concerto that could be played only by people who had 6 fingers on each hand to reach all of the keys quickly enough. But it enabled a higher level of musical performance. Shouldn't people, on your principle, Alex, be free to undergo a genetic alteration to have 6 fingers on each hand rather than 5? What would you say?
it depends on which part you value most. Like, if you appreciate the result, the final result, that the music sounds much more better, beautiful, then go for it.
Go for it.
But if you value the part, the process, whether you view it as an example of like working hard to achieve something great, then like you shouldn't. Like,
What's the difference between genetic alterations for the pianist to have 6 fingers and webbed feet for the swimmer, which you didn't like?
I don't know, maybe 6 fingers looks better than fish hands.
All right, thank you. Did you want to add something, Nancy?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think he mentions that like changing your body parts or having one more finger is of their free will.
Yes.
But I think that it's not truly free will, because people will choose to like have one more finger or change their body parts because they wanted to make money, or they wanted, because there are others, the public wanted to see that. And this situation that they're in, it's not like decided by themselves. Like, people are watching this kind of weird game so that there's attention, there's popularity. So people make money from this. And I think that this is not normal. This is not like...
Well, it's not normal. The question is whether we should move beyond the normal or the traditional to produce greater music, in the case of the 6-fingered pianist, or to swim faster than a fish, as Alex said before. All right, I want to thank Alex and Nancy for beginning our discussion so well. Let's give them some applause. Very good. Now, listening to the discussion between Alex and Nancy, there were one issue had to do with what's truly free choice, and whether choice made, maybe under the pressure of poverty, to achieve great fame, success, and wealth, is that really free choice? That's one question that we heard in the debate. But there was another issue about the enhanced games that went beyond the question of coercion versus consent and what counts as coercion. Nancy, you said that it would be weird. People might be drawn to these weird games. That points to a somewhat different objection, which raises the question, would they be weird or just different? And if they would be weird, why is that, or is that a moral worry that we should have? Is there anyone here who objects to the enhanced games for reasons beyond the important reason Nancy raised about coercion, having to do with the character of sports? Is there anyone who would like to raise an objection beyond the issue of consent to explain why you worry about it? Yes. Can we get a microphone here? Yeah, thank you. And what's your name?
My name is Ellen. I'm from the university next door. Well, my objection is because I think, come back to your question, the ethics, the essential thing about the Olympic Games is concentrate on the human beings to develop their ability to become faster, stronger, and higher. If we have this enhanced way to make these athletes become higher, faster, and stronger, then they are not human beings. Because we are competing, would you like to develop the potential of the human? We are organizing this back to the grace. We are looking for the fundamental energy and their enthusiasm for attending these games. Maybe back 1,000 years ago, it is not the outcome that is important. It's the spirit to participate is more important. But anyway, we should focus on the human beings rather than those techniques to make out the result.
Do you think there's something that's unhuman or inhumane about
That's true. I think we should focus on the human beings because, yeah.
But what counts as a violation of our humanity if athletes improve themselves by taking vitamins, or if they have very vigorous workout regimes so that they have stronger muscles than the average person? You don't see that as contrary to celebrating human excellence?
Yeah, I think that's to some extent by taking vitamins or working out very hard to stretch their limitation. It's still within being a human. They are not adding any other extra part of themselves or become weird of looking by.
Well, have you ever looked at a really bulked up weightlifter with huge muscles? Do you think that looks weird? And they've
Not beautiful, not.
It's not beautiful.
Yeah.
But it doesn't trouble you.
And I think that's just up to their limitation, not like something else extra.
But if they achieved those same enormous muscles through genetic alteration or drugs, then the same result, same bulked up muscles as someone who worked out at the gym every day.
Probably that's why we have those restrictions on prevent people to do those things by taking drugs, making that extra muscles.
Then why not prevent them from going to the gym more than 6 hours a day?
I think still to do kind of to some certain extent, we can allow something happen, but beyond that limitation, we can't allow that to happen because that's so unnatural.
Unnatural. And why is unnatural bad in athletic competition? Athletic competition should celebrate natural talents and gifts.
Yeah, I think so.
But not unnatural or altered ones.
Yeah, I think so because you would like to see the real the result of human beings. You want to see
with their natural gifts, their natural talents, their natural abilities.
Yeah.
All right, who did? All right, that's good. Now let's see if there's someone who disagrees with that point about what's natural. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sydney. Pardon me, but I want to just strongly disagree with what she said respectfully.
Yes.
First of all, I think you should really clarify what makes human being and what defines naturalness, as you said. If you think people have oddly, how can I say, unhuman body parts, how about Paralympics? I mean, every athlete, they have some sort of mechanical parts added to their body, and do you consider that inhuman?
In the Paralympics?
Yes.
Okay, people who compete, let's say, in marathons in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Oh,
or
that's
they
a
have
good example.
Added, I don't know, leg or anything. That's more unhuman, according to your definition.
Okay, that's a good challenge that Sydney raises. What about the Paralympics, where people do a marathon in a wheelchair?
I think it's
That's
okay.
unnatural?
I think it's okay if you have a default on something that you make it up. But for artificial, it's like added on top of what you already have. So that shouldn't be. I think if you are lacking of something, you can have a system to make it just, complete.
To bring yourself up to the normal level of capacity. What about that, Sydney?
I think normal is an artificial idea or the definition we give them. Maybe you should jump out of the box. What considered to be normal now might be quite aggressive prehistorically. I mean, we all evolved from apes, let's say. We're all very furry monkeys. And how we become from that tree-climbing creatures to this, decent-looking, clear-skinned,
Well,
human beings.
Let me give an example and see if Ellen can reply. Here's an actual example. The golfer Tiger Woods, a great golfer, he was very nearsighted, and he had LASIK surgery to improve his eyesight. And this was not genetic enhancement, but it was LASIK surgery. And he didn't only improve his eyesight to 20/20, normal eyesight. He went beyond to acquire unusually good eyesight, so that he could see even better than the average person. So he was repairing a deficiency, but he went beyond normal, and he won his next, I don't know how many tournaments, because he had the advantage of this very, very precise eyesight. Now, what's normal? Is it the average eyesight? What's morally, was that morally illegitimate for Tiger Woods to have that kind of special eye surgery?
I think that's very unfair if he did this eye surgery beyond the normal eyesight.
Yeah.
Because that's not fair to other competitors. So it is okay, he can modify it to repair his eyesight up to the normal eyesight. Yeah, but beyond that, that's unfair.
And what do you think, Sydney, of this case? Does it make your point?
I would like to say beyond, I understand all the concerns about how to regulate this new technology, but I would like to say if you cannot avoid it, why not embrace it? Why not harness it? It's like, if I may bring it, the nuclear power. If we cannot avoid that to happen, why not harness the best of it? The question wouldn't be whether we should use it or not, but how to better use it.
But in the case of Tiger Woods, should he be allowed to have extra normal vision through surgery?
I don't see why not. If you think that's unfair to others, I mean, everybody can use that.
But other people cannot afford it.
That's the process of means, not whether we should forbid it from the start.
Okay, so if it's important enough, maybe we could say all the competitors can get a subsidy if they need one to get super strong eyesight. But then let me ask Sydney one other version of this. Suppose it would help some people to develop X-ray vision, suppose that were possible. Maybe they want jobs to work as screeners at airports so that they don't have to use those big machines to examine people's suitcases and luggage. Should people be able to acquire, if it could be done medically safely, X-ray vision?
I don't see why not, with still regulations, yeah.
And what would you say about the webbed hands and feet for the Olympic swimmers?
We can adjust to that appearance. So we do medical beauty, right? Surgeries, right? I mean, beauty depends on the eye of the beholders.
So you don't object to the webbed hands and webbed feet?
No, it's like people who braided their hairs or they, do all sorts of stuff about their body.
So you've gone beyond Alex. Alex was a little bit uneasy about the web dance.
We got used to that.
We get used to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to respond? So Sydney has taken Alex's position even further. We'll get used to genetically altered people with webbed hands and webbed feet, and the 6 fingers, you're fine for the pianist. And the X-ray vision. Who disagrees with Sydney on these examples and would like to say why? Yes. Where the microphone isn't turned on.
Thank you, Professor. I'm Leo from School of Foreign Languages.
Yes.
And actually, the discussion and the theme of the talk, genetic engineering, makes me think of another thing that's called doping. So why we have a global, international association of anti-doping,
Right.
that's because we think doping is harmful to the health and morality of the athletics.
To the health and to the morality of athletics.
Yes.
All right, the health I understand, and we've discussed that. How is doping contrary to the morality of sports? That's an important point. What do you mean by that?
Because I think genetic engineering is similar to the doping. Because if we can just to change the genetics, like to make our body stronger and like make our athletes to achieve greater points and
Yes.
greater scores and to break their records.
Yes.
So why we can't use the doping to change our body? But actually, the fact is that Sinner, I will take an example. Sinner, a top tennis player, is forbidden from playing tennis for 2 months because he's tested positive, for checks.
Okay, so it's a kind of cheating.
Yes, I think.
And that's why it's well. Let me see if I understand, Leo. So it's contrary to the morality of sports, doping with drugs, or genetic doping.
Yes.
Is contrary to the morality of sports because it's a kind of cheating.
Maybe it's somehow just associated with cheating.
Okay, but then here's the hard question. If, and I suspect Sydney will propose this, if we can solve the problem of cheating very easily. We can change the rules so that everyone can use the performance-enhancing drugs or genetic alterations. And then it's no longer cheating by definition, if the rules permit it. Would you be in favor of that, or would you still have an objection?
Because that's just, we just return to the point just I make before. It's also about the morality of athletics. I think we can change the rules, but if we only change the rules because we want to disobey the morality, I don't think
okay, but then I want to know, what is the morality of sports that we're disobeying if we allow everyone to cheat, which is to say it's not cheating anymore. We've changed the rules to permit webbed feet for swimmers and even maybe mechanized devices for runners. The morality of sports isn't only about obeying the rules, because we are now debating whether to change the rules. Perhaps, Leo, you mean the morality of sport is at issue because this change in the rules would corrupt the sport, the purpose of sport and of athletic competition. Ellen, you agree with that? You think it would be corrupting. And the idea that it's weird may be gestured toward this. But then the question is, what do we mean by corrupting the meaning or the purpose of sport, that suggests that athletic competition has a certain purpose, or telos, to use Aristotle's idea of purpose, that certain rules honor and bring out, and certain rules might override or corrupt. And so what Leo's point about the morality of sport has raised is that beyond questions of fairness, that's the cheating objection, beyond questions of coercion, that's the consent issue, there is a third consideration here that leads some people perhaps to oppose the enhanced games, having to do with the meaning or purpose of human athletic competition properly understood. The language of corruption gestures toward a proper way of valuing athletic competition as a human competition. Now, how we distinguish corrupt versus appropriate forms of human athletic competition, I suppose, depends on how we characterize the purpose of sport. But what we have, thanks to those who've joined in this first discussion, are three possible objections. One about consent and coercion, the other about cheating and fairness, the third about corruption and the meaning or purpose of human athletic competition. I want to thank all of those who joined in this first round of the discussion for helping us clarify these three ethical questions. Thank you. Now, I want to shift from, well, let me say one more word about the corruption objection. The corruption objection points to a conception of the purpose of sports as having something to do with the celebration and cultivation and appreciation of natural talents and gifts. Which is why Leo, and I suspect others, think that the webbed feet for the swimmers is a kind of corruption because we're no longer celebrating the natural talents and gifts. We're instead engaging in a kind of spectacle, a kind of arms race, a genetic or pharmacological arms race that goes beyond an appreciation of the natural talents and gifts that athletic achievement or the piano concerto, music at their best, honor and reward. So the gifted character of human achievement seems somehow to be at stake in this corruption objection. Perhaps we'll come back to that when we consider another domain where genetic engineering is very much at issue. And this has to do with parents trying to give their children the best possible chance in life. And the question arises whether parents who want to give their children the best chance in life should be able, provided it's medically safe, to pick and choose the genetic traits of the children they'll have, to create even designer children, for example. Some of you may have seen a movie, a science fiction movie made some years ago called Gattaca. Has anyone seen Gattaca? It's a story, it's about a future in which parents routinely, through embryo screening, they didn't have CRISPR yet, but through embryo screening, could pick and choose the best genetic traits or the preferred genetic traits of their children. We have a short video excerpt of Gattaca, parents who are confronted with this choice. Let's have a look and then see what you think. Who's going to show us the video?
Vincent?
From an early age, I came to think of myself as others thought of me,
Vincent?
chronically ill. Every skinned knee and runny nose was treated as if it were life-threatening.
This is the natural
I'm sorry,
child.
the insurance won't cover it. If he fell...
But I was told that everything was...
I really wish there was something I could do.
Like most other parents of their day, they were determined that their next child would be brought into the world in what has become the natural way.
Your extracted eggs, Marie, have been fertilized with Antonio's sperm. After screening, we are left, as you see, with 2 healthy boys and 2 very healthy girls. Naturally, no critical predispositions to any of the major inheritable diseases. All that remains is to select the most compatible candidate. First, we may as well decide on gender. Have you given it any thought?
We would want Vincent to have a brother, to play with.
Of course you would. Hello, Vincent. You have specified hazel eyes, dark hair, and fair skin. I have taken the liberty of eradicating any potentially prejudicial conditions, premature baldness, myopia, alcoholism and addictive susceptibility, propensity for violence, obesity, etc.
We didn't want... diseases, yes, but...
Right. We were just wondering if it's good to just leave a few things to chance.
You want to give your child the best possible start. Believe me, we have enough imperfection built in already. Your child doesn't need any additional burdens. And keep in mind, this child is still you. Simply the best of you.
Okay, so thank you. All right, we can take that down. Now, how many people, let's turn the video off. Okay, now, how many think that provided it's medically safe, parents should be free to choose the best genetic traits for their children, not only hair color and eye color, but let's say IQ, a little boost to IQ, or muscles, or musical ability, were it possible. How many would be in favor and how many would be against the Gattaca scenario? How many would be in favor? Just a handful, not including, I notice, Alex and Sydney. How many would be opposed? The majority are opposed. Let's hear, what is the objection exactly? Who has an objection and can tell us why you oppose this scenario? Yes.
Thank you. My Spanish name is Antonio.
Antonio.
Yeah, you can call me Anthony. I think that if you can select your personality by your parents, what comes with the chances is the burden, which also means the responsibility. Because you don't have to work hard for your grade A. For example, I take 100 score, but my friend take 90 because my IQ is higher than him.
And your parents gave you a higher IQ?
Yes, because my parents are richer than him, so that my personal labor is out of meaning. And so that our world will become interdivided, and those who are rich and who have more capital in their hands will become more richer and more smarter, higher, stronger.
Yes.
For those poor people, they just keep falling, because they are labeled as disabled.
Okay, and so if your parents buy enhanced IQ, Antonio, for you, that would be unfair. It would give you an unfair advantage in life over someone whose parents did not buy a higher IQ for him or her. Yes?
I suppose so.
Okay, so who has a reply to Antonio? Yes. Yeah.
I think that argument. Oh, sorry. My name is Zelen. And
Zelen.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's my Chinese name in Pinyin, and I kind of converted it to English.
Go ahead.
Pronouncing it. Yeah, cool. So I think my argument, responding to his, would be that this argument goes both way. So people with naturally gifted IQ has a advantage in this competing society, and it's not by their choice, and it's not by anything. It was just naturally gifted for them.
Okay, all right, that's a good reply. Antonio, what do you say? Even now, without genetic enhancement, isn't it unfair that some people genetically have a higher IQ than others without any enhancement?
Well, first, when we say a person is gifted, that means he's by naturally have a higher IQ.
Yes.
It's not, if you say those artificial talented are gifted, that means we are the God, but actually we're not. Because these gifted are by random. I don't know whether I'm going to be a smart person or I'm dull. Because everybody is created equal. And we don't know if we have higher IQ or not. It's decided by so-called or natural or God whatsoever.
So natural talents or God-given gifts are not within our control. They exceed our control. They're beyond our control. And so the advantages, would you say, Antonio, the advantages we derive from natural talents or God-given gifts, there's still advantages from which we benefit. Isn't that unfair?
It is, to some perspective, it is unfair, but we have a lot of system to fix that.
And what system are you thinking of? The redistribution of income from...
For example, when we have a car, many people have a car now, but we don't have the IQ to build a car. It's the people who are smarter who invent the car, like, I don't know, Porsche or Ford or what. But I still can be the driver in this day, and I'm able to use the vehicle, although I'm not as smarter as him. Another example is Einstein. He invented
right.
Yeah. But
so people with great natural gifts achieve great things and contribute to society to a greater degree, perhaps, than those with lesser gifts. But, well, do you think there's a difference in principle between natural talents and gifts, being born with a high IQ, and genetically selected IQ advantages?
I think there is an underlying difference in that the intention, or there is an enactor in that. I think for the genetically engineered one, you can trace down to a specific enactor. And make
the parent.
The parent.
The parent chose, let's say, I'm the beneficiary of my parent's choice.
Yeah.
What's the difference between my having that advantage because my parent gave it to me, chose it for me, and my having that gift simply by natural gift?
I think it was just harder to trace down if it's like completely random, natural selection, all that meiosis process.
Right.
It would just make it harder for you to target down to one specific point and argue that, oh, this shouldn't be done right, because it kind of permeates and diffuse out the whole process, and it's hard to point fingers at things.
Thank you for that. Now let me bring in, is there someone listening to this discussion who thinks that deliberately selecting and controlling the genetic future of the next generation, excuse me, that there's something objectionable about that? What exactly is objectionable about deliberately choosing or controlling the genetic makeup of the future generation? Do you have an answer? Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor. My name is Jackie, and I'm a clinical medical student.
Okay.
I think that I don't agree with this because when you're controlling something, there must be a purpose. And the one who is controlling it, he dominates this. Like, for example, right now, those who make the rules and who like does the distribution of all the resources. They have their goals, and we don't know what that is. And
Right.
there is equality and all the suffering right now. And if we use our technology to enlarge this equality, then what will happen in the future? What will happen to all those who do not have the power, who do not have a say on such things? And if some very arrogant guys say that they can be the God, they can determine what will happen in the future, then what should we do? Like the normal human beings, those who because this is a matter of scale, like most of us.
So you think that there would be an imbalance of power between those making the choices and those not making the choices about the genetic traits of the next generation?
Yes, and the gap will be enlarged by this technology.
But if your parents are choosing for you, they're trying to choose the best for you, the highest IQ, the greatest strength, the best musical ability, let's say.
But the best is determined by the society. Like the standard of the best is determined by
Yes.
the principles
Yes.
or the consensus of the society.
Yes, and why is that bad?
And like these common values of what is good determined by the society is also influenced by other factors, by something that like we don't know where it comes from. For example, I'm sorry, just...
Well, here's maybe an example of what you're worried about. What about the history of eugenics? The history of eugenics, where those in power tried to improve humanity, or at least those in their country, by, in some cases, very harsh measures. In Hitler's Nazi Germany, for example, through forced sterilization of the supposedly unfit and ultimately genocide. That was a eugenic project. Do you worry that any attempt at genetic control of the future generation is eugenic?
I think it might lead to that direction.
And what if it's just individual parents deciding freely in the marketplace rather than state coercion? Is that also a kind of eugenics, a kind of free market eugenics?
But I think that what sounds like an deliberate decision, for example, to give his children an advantage or an edge in music,
yes,
even this thought is determined by some factor beyond us.
Yes.
We developed this thought because of some corruption or something that has gone wrong in the society.
Okay, and what we're trying to get at is what exactly is the corruption?
Competition.
But what is the value that's being corrupted? Is it the unqualified, unconditional parental love for a child regardless of how smart the child is or how strong the child is?
I think it's meritocracy. It's not love. We're neglecting true love. We're only loving meritocracy.
We're loving meritocracy if we're trying to create the smartest possible kids.
Yes, certainly. And
so they can get into the best university.
Yeah, that's happening right now.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
And is it happening only through genetics or in other ways too?
In other ways too. And genetics will only worsen the situation.
So when parents try and pressure their children to excel,
yeah,
that's meritocracy.
Yeah, that's not love.
It's comparative meritocracy, but it's not love.
Yes.
Because it's different from love because, why? Because love accepts the child as they are, however great their achievements may be.
Because love is unconditional.
It's unconditional.
Yes.
And today you think more and more parents, by focusing on meritocratic competition, trying to make their kids smarter and more successful, that's a corruption of unconditional love.
Yes.
Whereas unconditional love accepts children as they come, as they are, however they may excel or achieve.
To some extent, yes.
Well, that's a powerful suggestion, because what that suggests, it's Jackie, you said?
Yes.
what Jackie is suggesting is that the problem may not be only with genetic engineering. The problem may really lie in the attitude that leads parents, and for that matter, the society.
Yeah, I don't think the problem is about technology, it's about us humans.
It's about us, and the problem about us has to do with the drive to compete and to create the best possible child, the best possible performance, the best possible achievement, and that this drive, this impulse, this attitude, and it's an attitude of mastery or control, that this is at odds with the unconditional love of parents for children, which is to accept them as they come. All right, I want to thank Jackie and everyone who's participated in this discussion of designer children. Let's give them a round of applause. So what can we conclude from the discussions we've had about genetic engineering in sports and also, in this case, in parenting? It seems that we've got the three objections, one about coercion and consent, one about fairness, and one about corruption. Now, the corruption objection that Jackie just articulated in regard to the parenting case points to a certain norm of accepting and appreciating with unconditional love the natural talents and gifts, whatever they may be, of the child. And this is analogous to the corruption argument we explored in the case of sports, where it was suggested that the problem with the morality of sports is the genetic engineering, the webbed feet, for example, corrupt an appreciation of athletic performance as a celebration of natural gifts. What these arguments have in common is that both resist a very powerful tendency today. And as Jackie points out, it's a tendency that finds expression not only in genetic alteration, but in a tendency to overlook or to override an appreciation of natural talents and gifts, and to exercise a kind of mastery or dominion or control, in this case over the future generations. And what makes this whole question difficult is that in much of our lives, we want to extend human mastery and control. We want to exert our will to shape or reshape nature, even bend nature to human purposes. Medical science is an example. We want to push the frontiers of medical science to cure illness and disease and repair injury. Just as in the traditional Olympics, we celebrate those who push themselves to develop their natural gifts to the full extent possible. In our careers, in our role as students, we want to control to the fullest possible extent our future, our success, our achievements, devoting effort, working hard to get into Beida or to get into Harvard, to excel. Effort, striving, the exertion of mastery and dominion over our circumstance, or for that matter, over nature, we generally think of as a good thing, as an exercise of human agency. But in the case of parenting, as in the case of sports, it seems that an excess of mastery and dominion, of that attitude of control, can lead us to miss or to override or to corrupt an appreciation of the giftedness of human experience. And if parents fail to appreciate children as gifts, this undermines the unconditional love of parents for children, Jackie says. And if we override the gifted athletic capacities of those who compete in the Olympics by seeking an enhanced Olympics, we may also miss an appreciation of the giftedness of natural human athletic talents or musical talents in the case of the pianist. And in the end, overriding or forgetting the gifted character of human experience and achievement may actually not be an exercise of freedom after all. Because if we think of ourselves, what's the moral of this story and of this discussion? I think it's this. Changing our nature to fit the social and economic arrangements that we've designed, that in the end is not an exercise of freedom. Because it assumes those social and economic arrangements are fixed once and for all, beyond human control. So it's actually, if you think about it, a form of disempowerment. A form of disempowerment because it distracts us from asking questions about how social and economic life should be organized and arranged, and focuses instead on changing our nature to fit those social and economic arrangements. So, here's what I conclude. Rather than try to change our nature to fit the world that we've created, perhaps instead, the higher freedom consists in reflecting together, as we've been doing this evening, on what social and economic arrangements are best suited, most appropriate to cultivating the talents and gifts, ambitions and aspirations of the imperfect human beings that we are. Thank you all very much for this discussion. Thank you. And now Professor Han is going to join us.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Michael Sandel, for the wonderful lecture. And so the next part for tonight's event is the panel discussion. So again, I will still be the moderator, and we'll have Professor Han Shuifa to give some comments, and we will start some discussions. So yes, let's get ready for that.
沈代教授啊，非常高兴啊今天来听了沈代教授一个非常有挑战性的一个讲演和现场的对话啊，因为我们现在碰到的一个就是人类发展到今天，我们碰到2大问题，一个就是生物工程，也就是基因科技带来的挑战，另外一个就是沈代教授明天要讨论的一个人工智能的问题。那么刚才沈代教授以他有一贯的风格，把这个问题提给大家，然后我们看到现场这个同学也给出了不同的答复不同的答复。那么当然沈代教授他非常强调比如说人的自然的本性，人的一些道德的问题，我们碰到基因伦理这个基因编辑，尤其是基因编辑的一个伦理问题。那么我想这些问题都是非常重要的问题，我们这个时代我们必须处理的。但是呢，我跟沈代教授稍微有一点不同的看法，因为我觉得像天赋、自然这些问题，向来人类就是这个人类向来就要不是人类很早以前就碰到这样的问题。因为比如说什么叫自然，刚才有个同学说得很好，什么叫自然？比如说我们智人在最早出现的时候，他没有语言，后来今天我们当然不知道他具体在什么时候，后来人类突然出现了语言。那么你说语言是自然的还是不自然的，对吧？比如说在1949年左右的时候，全世界人类的平均寿命只有30岁，而今天人类的平均寿命具体数字我不太知道大概有70多岁或者这个60多岁。那么你说这是自然还是不自然的？比如说以前我们在不进行这个疫苗不普遍的那个打疫苗的情况下，在中国社会，比如说有很多的小儿麻痹症，对吧？有天花，那么你说这些现象是自然的还是不自然的？当然，基因编辑它有一个很重要的一个重大的区别，就是说它通过基因编辑来改变了人的基因的结构。但是呢，他所造成的就是沈代教授提的问题，还是一个他提的实际上2类问题。一个问题是说，我们在一个大概我们觉得是正常的人的范围之内，他的天赋增长了。还有一个问题就是刚才他举的例子，比如说人变得稀奇古怪了，像鸭子一样，对吧？或者他这个有一个眼睛像 X 光一样。那么这两类问题呢，当然都是有可能出现的，基因编辑有可能出现，因为现在基因编辑在用在后代，就是下一代的那个这个生殖上面，已经不是一个想象，而是个现实，在美国出现了。那么我想呢，有一个更高的一个角度来讨论这个问题。就是说，无论基因技术也好，无论是人工智能也好，它都是人类进化中的出现的一个情况，是人类进化的结果。那么我们有没有可能，我们今天的人有没有可能，有没有权利来控制人的进化？如果说我们有能力或者有权利来控制人类的进化，我们就到今天这个水平我们发现了基因的技术，发现了人工智能技术，我们不让它再继续发展，因为它可能危害。重要的一点是我们现在人类的状况，因为未来人类状况是怎么样的，我们不知道，我们有没有这个权利？这是一点我要讨论的，我就是想跟沈代教授提出来的一个问题。还有一个问题，大家可能经常在碰到或者会想到的一个问题。或者有时候也会担忧，我们所谓的强人工智能，对吧？也就是说，这个人工一般智能，有人叫翻成通用人工智能，这样的智能出现的话，如果出现的话，在2018年的时候，当时就说未来以来，强人工智能就会在我们这一代的人类出现，他们就会控制人类，甚至消灭人类。那么面对这样一种可能性，我们人类是不是要继续 增强自己。如果基因技术能够让我们人类增强自己，我们能够始终对这个人工智能，即使未来的人工智能保持一种优先性，那么这个基因技术，你说是应该用呢，还是不应该用呢？还是说因为我们觉得基因技术会改变我们人类现在的状态，所以我们宁愿不用，让强人工智能来控制人类，甚至消灭人类？所以这个问题，我想讨论这个问题，应该放在这样大的一个视野，这样一个长远的眼光上来讨论。那么一些这个是不是应该采用，如何采用的问题，才能够得到比较好的理解和处理。这是我想的，我的一个想法我要不先说到这儿
Great.
So, would you like to respond?
Yes. First, thank you, Professor Han, for those very thoughtful remarks. You raised the important question of what is nature, and hasn't human nature changed and evolved over time? And haven't we invented ways of improving our nature with vaccinations, for example, to create immunity to certain diseases, to make our bodies less vulnerable to certain diseases? I think this is a good example and a hard example. But here's what I would say about vaccination and immunity. It does represent an enhancement, a medical enhancement. But it's different from X-ray vision or webbed feet or the sixth finger in the following way. And I bet you would agree with me on that, or I should ask you. Do you think there's a difference between making our bodies immune to measles or polio and adding the webbed feet or the sixth finger or the X-ray vision? Would you agree that there's a difference? Now, okay, now here's what but then your challenge to me is, what exactly does that difference consist in? That's what you're challenging me to say. And here's how I would reply. The difference is that improving the immunity of the body to disease, measles, polio, and so on, is for the sake of health. It's for the telos, or the purpose. It's a medical purpose. It's to either restore the body or to prevent the loss of natural human capacity. If someone has polio, then they lose a natural human capacity to stand and to walk and to run. And if we repair that condition through the use of crutches, or better yet, prevent that condition through vaccinations, polio vaccinations, we are restoring the natural human capacity to enable people to flourish as natural human beings. So it represents improvement, it represents progress, of course, I agree. But it's progress for the sake of a purpose or a telos, which is medical, which is enabling us to flourish as natural human beings, unlike the webbed feet or the sixth finger or the X-ray vision, which is not a medical purpose, but the purpose is really a competitive advantage, to go to the point that Jackie was raising, a competitive advantage in athletic competition, for example. And so I think we have to distinguish these cases by asking what purpose. And when we ask that, it's possible to embrace and to affirm genetic engineering for medical purposes, or to repair injury, while still rejecting non-medical intervention, genetic enhancement, to create designer babies or to satisfy the consumer or competitive preferences and desires of parents. What do you think of that distinction?
Would you like to respond to the question?
Yeah. Okay. So that I think is the essential point, very important point that you raise, and that's how I would address it.
Now,
yeah,
I mean, OK 那么刚才这个沈代教授他提这个问题呢，其实是我承认这个问题很尖锐，但是呢，就基因工程如果用到人类身上呢，我认为有3大问题。第一个，沈代教授并不反对，就是基因的技术用于治疗人类的疾病，对吧？就用于治疗的手段，沈代教授不反对。那么还有其实有两个，有一个呢，沈代教授他没有提到，就基因技术用于人类的增强，这是现在争论非常大的。我们要不要增强人类？比如说，刚才沈代教授提到体育运动员，如果说你能够增加体力，他弹跳得很高，对吧？他跑得更快，对吧？还有比如说我们在座的各位，如果同学也好，老师也好，老师觉得精力不够，如果我们通过基因能够增强你的精力，你的记忆力大大的增强，你上这个背英文单词，你一天可以背2000个，那么这种增强你们接不接受？第3个就是最尖锐的，沈代尔教授提到的，我们要不制造出对我们现在的人看来是稀奇古怪的，比如说6个手指头，对不对？比如说像这个鸭蹼一样的脚，我想呢，后面这个可能少数人会同意，对吧？绝大多数人不会同意。那么，所以呢，就这一点来说，我同意沈代尔教授啊，我觉得不应该有我们人类就是这个生长出，比如说像这个像那个鸭蹼一样的脚，或者6个手指头，甚至8个手指头，对吧？这个我们可能是同意，但是有一个问题，大家可能看过一些美国拍的、好莱坞拍的一些这个外星人的电影，那外星人跟我们长得就不一样，对吧？长得稀奇古怪的。这里有一个很重要的一个哲学问题，什么哲学问题呢？就是我们人类的形象是不是向来如此的？我们未来的人类的形象是不是要保持我们现在的这样一个状态？这个问题我们要考虑的。那么我们还有一点，就是刚才我已经提到的，我们在多大的程度上，我们有权利来始终保持我们人类现在状况。我在这个发表的一篇论文叫《人工智能时代的人文主义》里面做了一个思想实验。如果我们最早的智人，我们现在全世界人类，不管是这个欧洲的人还是亚洲的人黑人或者黄种人，都是智人嘛，对吧？如果最早的智人说我们的形象就是最完美的形象，我们不能改变，那我们今天就不能坐在这里，我们不会有大学，我们也不能穿衣服，大家都赤身裸体，我们也不能吃熟食，对吧？更不用说用手机。那么我们的形象，而且这个基因的科学研究也证明，智人的基因跟我们现在人类基因还是有差别的，人类在进化过程中有些基因有改变了。其实我们今天也面临着这样的一个问题，我们是不是有权决定未来的人类就永远保持这个形象？我们要从这点角度来看啊。
Yes. Okay. Well, let me try to reply. First, I'm in favor of cooked food. Although I do like sushi. But this raises the question of what counts as an improvement. Now, I agree that the examples I gave, some of them were extreme. The webbed feet, the sixth finger. And you rightly point out, Professor Han, that these are science fiction scenarios. But let's take something that is not a science fiction scenario to imagine. Let's take the example of students who are competing and whose parents want them to compete effectively to do well on the Gaokao exam, to win admission to Beida. And they have available drugs, or even, let's imagine, a genetic alteration that will improve their concentration so that they can study 12 hours a day instead of only 10 hours a day for the Gaokao. And suppose there's even a genetic alteration that improves their IQ a little bit. Now, would this constitute evolution of human nature? Would you be in favor of it?
So, I said, no, okay. 那个沈代周教授很好哈，因为我们至少在一点上，达成了一致。就我们现在的对人类的理解，对人类的审美的理解，我和他都不希望这个通过基因编辑制造出生一个鸭蹼，这个像鸭蹼一样的脚，或者6个手指头，对不对？或者我们中国的佛教里面有千手观音，我们不希望那个状况，对吧？那么，但是这种情况，我现在是保持这样一种开放的态度。未来的人类怎么想，我们不知道，对吧？但是现在我们的人类可以达成一个共识，不希望这种情况出现。但是那个沈代教授后面提这个，如果能够增强我们的记忆，那么而且在一个安全的情况下，而且这种情况呢，如果在技术可能的情况下，能够普惠到所有人，那我觉得是可以接受的。
And you'd be in favor.
对，我们应该达成一个共识。为什么呢？我举一个很简单的例子，我们现在人类患有很多疾病，但是最好的手术和最好的药，一开始出来都是非常昂贵的，只有少数人才能接受，才能接受这样的医疗，接受这样的治疗。那么这些东西，你说是不是因为它造成了不平等，我们就不要发展呢？不是的。我们在技术可能的情况下，要让这种手术、让这种药变得每个人都可以接受。那么，在人类的增强的情况下，就是人类基因的增强技术，我的一个前提是它在保证人类的安全，就是没有带来大规模的风险的情况下，那我觉得是可以的，而且。我们要通过技术的这个改进，让每一个人都能享受到。为什么呢？我们还有一个重要的背景，人工智能在飞速的发展。我们人类要不要增强自己？我们是愿意保持人类中心主义呢，还是愿意某一天我们被更强的这个人工智能给控制或者消灭？更不用说还可能有外星生命。更强的外星生命这样的一种可能性下，所以我在我前面说的2个前提满足下，我认为通过基因技术来增强人类是可以接受的。
Okay, all right. But here I would like to reply. If it's safe, so we have two considerations: that it's safe, and that it can be universal. Everyone can have access. Rich and poor alike. Still, there are reasons to oppose some forms of genetic engineering and of AI. And let me give you an example where I think maybe you will agree with me that there are reasons beyond safety and fairness. Suppose in your philosophy class, you found that more and more students were submitting papers and essays that were written by ChatGPT. Just suppose, hypothetically, that happened. Now, would you say, provided, now, you might object because it's cheating. That's like the cheating objection we had with the enhanced Olympics. But cheating simply means against the rules. So you could change the rules and say that every student may use ChatGPT to write the philosophy papers if they want to. And there could be a problem of access if the ChatGPT app were expensive, that some could afford it and others not. But we could solve that problem by creating universal access to the ChatGPT. And it doesn't pose any medical risk to write a philosophy paper that way. No risk, universal access. Would you change the rules in your classroom to say you can submit philosophy papers using this new and improved technology? The papers will be better. They'll be better. Would you be in favor of that?
这个沈代教授提这个问题很好啊，这个问题呢非常好，但是在我看来呢，这个问题不尖锐。为什么不尖锐呢？因为大家知道我们的那个DeepSeek 出现了以后，它开源了，它免费了，对吧？大家人人都可以用。
Okay.
但是呢，我同意沈代教授的一个观点，我不同意课堂上，尤其像北京大学这样的课堂上，可以学生的作业用 ChatGPT 来写，不同意。但是仅仅定这个规则没有用。始终永远北大会有一些学生要作弊的，对吧？这个大家都知道，当然就少数人了。但是呢，我们解决这个问题呢，不是改变规则，而是改变技术。很高兴的，我前几天看到已经有 ChatGPT 查重的软件出来了，它可以非常容易的查出你这个论文不是你自己写的，是那个 AI 写的，很高兴。所以这就是中国的一句话，叫道高一尺，魔高一丈啊。所以我们只有这样来解决，规则没有改变，在座的各位还是不能作弊，对吧？但是呢，你可以用这个 AI 用大语言模型来帮你查资料，来帮你这个收集一些基本观点，对吧？而且呢，在有些不涉及到人的创造力的方面，我们让 ChatGPT 来帮我们做是可以的呀，帮你拟一个日程，帮你做一个 PPT， 这都是可以的。但考试这种创造力的工作，体现每个学生自己的能力的工作不允许，就是增强了以后，就是用基因技术增强了人的智力以后，这也不允许。这点我们是一致的。
Okay.
谢谢。
But then, all right, I agree with that. I agree. I would not change the rule either for papers that involve creativity. I should say, by the way, that those apps, those software apps that enable you to determine whether a paper is written by ChatGPT or DeepSeek, I've used those many times, and they are not always accurate. They are not always accurate. But that's a side point. The fundamental point is, you and I agree, Professor Han, that for papers involving creativity in philosophy, for example, we don't want to change the rule, even though the technological enhancement would lead, maybe, to better papers, better results. And even though the access to the DeepSeek or ChatGPT would be universal. The real question is, why do we not want to change the rule where creativity in writing a philosophy paper is involved? I would say the reason is not universal access, because everyone has access, or could have. The reason is not medical safety. It's perfectly safe. The reason is back to the corruption argument. Well, what good or what aspect of the social practice of teaching and learning is corrupted? In this case, what's corrupted is the meaning of learning and creating and thinking and challenging for oneself. Even if the paper I produce is not as good as the technologically enhanced paper written by DeepSeek or by ChatGPT. So I think the reason we agree is that you and I both accept the argument from corruption, the third argument that emerged from the discussion. But the argument for corruption requires that we articulate the purpose or the telos of the social practice, whether of parenting, the norm of unconditional love of parents for children, or the social practice of athletic competition, the celebration and appreciation of natural talents and gifts, or in the case of education, the human good connected with teaching and learning and reasoning and creating and sometimes failing and sometimes learning from the failure. That's why we both don't want to change that rule. But my argument, the underlying philosophical argument, is that we then both accept this third objection, the one to do with upholding and affirming certain distinctive goods embedded in social practices, in this case, of education and of teaching and of learning.
沈教授说，他这个说得很好，就是我们要维护一些社会的公共的原则，社会的比如说正义的原则，我们认为值得珍视的一些价值。
Yes.
那么我想呢，
Right.
如果这样说可能还不够，还要说得更高。什么更高呢？也就是说，在这样一个时代，在基因技术的时代，在人工智能的时代，我们面临的问题是维护人类的。我是个人类中心主义者，我们要维护人类的尊严、人类的这优越性、人类的情感的价值，以及人类的一个合作的精神。我们只有在这样一个前提下，我们来讨论我们应该遵守的一些规则。所以呢，这个规则可能它有持久性，但是规则的内容可能会改变。因为像天赋也好，这个天才也好，它实际上会改变的。而且我们现在即使没有基因技术，天赋和这个人的这个天资啊，或者他的天才等等这些才能吧，天生的才能吧，它实际上也是有偶然性的。那么沈代教授有一个很重要的观点，他认为这种偶然性是生命给我们的礼物， 是很珍贵的，我同意这个观点。但是呢，如果我们相信人类的不断的进化，我们相信这个人类是在不断的发展自己的，即使有了基因增强的技术，才能还是有差别的。如果将来发展到某一天，我们把人都编成了同样的，那跟机器人一样了，那这人类的尊严、人类的这个能力、人类的这个情感就没有了。那这种情况，我认为不太会出现啊，不会出现。如果出现了，那人类跟机器人就一样了。所以呢，我们在这样一个更高的一个观点下呢，在这样一个更高的视野下呢，我同意沈德尔教授的观点啊，这个是我同意的。但是呢，我们必须看得更远，看得更高。我们面对的威胁是现实的，虽然每个人实际上你日常生活中不会去想这个问题，但是当我们在把人类作为一个类来看的时候，这些威胁是切实存在的，而我们的这个对我们的一种挑战，我们的努力的目标也应该是切实的，是这样的啊，谢谢。
Good. So thank you both for the wonderful discussions. I would like to hear more about it, but we are running out of time, so we need more time for the Q&A. So again, thank you all, and let's give our professors a round of applause.
结束了吗？好了吗？
下面就是那个
开放提问啊，行。
So so now the floor is open to the audience. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and we will have microphones sent to you. So right here.
如果给我提问，请用中文啊。
So 这边这位男同学，第一排的这边。好。
I have an oddly specific question. How do you think genetic engineering is going to affect the discourse and the policy making against transgender individuals around the world right now? And for example, their applications on lesbian relationships, where they could potentially conceive a baby without a man?
Gay and lesbian couples and partners can conceive using sperm and egg donation without genetic engineering. So it raises the question whether you consider sperm and egg donation to be genetic engineering, but it isn't intervention of the kind that we're discussing. So I think that's perfectly possible without entering into the kinds of controversies and debates about genetic engineering that we've been having. The question that does arise with sperm and egg donation is whether couples, whether they're gay, lesbian, or straight, should pick and choose through embryo screening or through screening the genetic traits of the donors of the gametes, the sperm and the egg. Should they pick and choose in a consumer-like way, like the parents in Gattaca were being invited to do with the embryo screening? And that is an issue. The consumerist mentality, the consumerist approach to the genetic profile of one's children, that gets to the serious ethical questions we've been discussing. But that issue about consumer choice in the genetic traits of one's children, that applies equally to gay and straight couples. It applies to anyone who uses reproductive technologies for non-medical choices. Do I want a child with brown hair and blue eyes, for example? Do I want a smarter child or a child of average IQ. There are excesses of this kind anytime parents can pick and choose the genetic traits of an embryo, or for that matter, in a sperm bank. We have commercial sperm banks now that don't simply provide healthy sperm for couples who need fertility treatment, but who have donor catalogs that describe all of the genetic characteristics of the sperm donor. And these commercial sperm banks, there's the most prominent one in the United States, locates its sperm bank in two places, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, between Harvard and MIT, and in Palo Alto, California, near Stanford. And they recruit sperm donors from Ivy League schools, and they advertise as a marketing device the prestigious Ivy League source of the sperm that they're making available. And they provide a donor catalog that gives the details. Now, this, it seems to me, is an example of the corruption of parenting that we were discussing earlier, because a consumerist approach to the genetic profile of one's children is, I would say, a corruption of, as Jackie was pointing out, the unconditional love of parents for children. But I would emphasize that this is not a problem that's distinctive to gay and lesbian partners who are trying to conceive a child through various forms of sperm or egg donation. But it's true of any parents who would try to control, as in the Gattaca scenario, the genetic traits of their children.
What about the ability to change your gender on a biological level? Like, that has some profound implications on policy. For example, transgender sports is a big thing, right? Can a genetically engineered trans person compete in the gender category?
Well, this goes to the question, this is not an issue about whether, it's the controversial question of whether and under what conditions gender-affirming surgeries should be permitted. The issue of sports and how to create fair conditions of competition in sports is an independent question, separate question from the question of the conditions under which gender-affirming surgeries shall be permitted. In the case of athletic competition, as we saw in the discussion, questions of fairness arise. And questions of fairness are already present, even given the fact that some people have superior natural strength or speed. And so, to the extent that those questions of fairness are made more complicated by people who undergo gender transition, that has to be dealt with under the heading of fairness. But whether those gender-affirming surgeries should be permitted in the first place can be decided independently of the question of how athletic competitions should be organized in a way that's fair.
韩老师，你有什么需要补充的吗？是没有。没有哦，那行，那咱们 okay. So the next question. So we have a lot more questions. So please make your question concise, and also please make sure that you only ask one question. So yeah, this boy on the second row, please.
Hello, sir. My name is Li Chenghuan, and I am an undergraduate student from Guanghua School of Management. And I believe that today's discussion is based on a single assumption that states that ethics are universal and permanent, and it does not change through the passage of time, or it does not change depend on which region are we looking at. However, we could say there are some flaws in this assumption, because a few hundred years ago, cutting our hair was considered unethical in Chinese culture. However, we do not see anyone who hasn't cut their hair in their whole life now, right? And secondly, we also see that somehow black people were not considered as a full person back in the United States just a few hundred years ago. And that is also considered unethical now. So I think there is a reason to believe that ethics is not somehow universal or permanent. So my question is, when the situation changes in the future, let's say because of global warming, we could be forced to move to Mars, and somehow some kind of genetic engineering might make us somehow consume less oxygen so that we could move more people to Mars. Or let's say somehow a nuclear disaster has broke out, and a kind of genetic engineering might increase our resistance to radiation. Or even in the situation of World War III, where a genetic engineering might increase a chance of a certain country to win the war. What would happen to ethics if the situation changes? And would the discussion that has been made today still be useful in the time where the situation changes?
I think it would still be useful. And the example you give about racism and the slavery that existed in the United States and the segregation that existed in the United States, racism toward African Americans, that was once accepted. Well, although even then it wasn't universally accepted, it was contested. It existed. There were those who defended it. But there were also, even at that time, those who made moral arguments against it, the abolitionists, for example. Now, today, you're right, social norms have changed, at least to some extent. Racism and segregation are not accepted to the extent that they were in earlier times. That's true. But does that show that ethics is not universal? Or does it show the opposite? Because today, when we reject racism and segregation, we don't say, today we're against it, but back then it was okay. What we say is racial discrimination and segregation are wrong, universally wrong, so that in retrospect, we condemn the way they lived and acted then. A truly relativist ethic would say, we do it this way now, today we believe in racial equality. They did it differently then. They didn't believe in racial equality. But that's not the position we take when we look back now. We look back retrospectively and say, slavery was wrong then, though unfortunately it was more widespread, racial segregation and slavery even. But it was wrong back then, even though not everyone back then acknowledged it. So this example illustrates the universality of ethics, not moral relativism. Now, as for what the second half of the question was, remind me about the second half of the question.
Would you like to say the second part again?
Yeah, so my second part of the question was that will the discussion that has been made today, based on today's our perspective of the ethics, will it still stand in the future?
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Yes. Well, I think it will. Now, if to take the parenting example, the designer babies example, if in the future it became widespread that parents genetically treated their children as consumer objects and picked various their hair color and their eye color and their IQ. If that became a widespread practice in the future, let's say, the discussion we had today would still be relevant. Jackie's question would still be relevant. People could still ask in such a society, have we begun not to value children with unconditional love? Have we begun to treat them more as consumer goods, like when we order a certain car with certain color and certain features? So just as today we can look back and condemn the practice of slavery and racial segregation, sometime in the future, we might look at the new existing practices and say this represents a loss of unconditional love of parents for children. And even today, we notice, even short of genetically altering the IQ of children, that when hyper-parents, we have this term hyper-parenting, parents who are pressuring, who put great pressure on their children to study hard for the Gaokao and to take the tutoring courses. And even now, short of the high-tech version of genetic engineering, we are aware, at least in moments, that maybe we as parents are applying too much pressure to children for their well-being, and maybe we as parents are beginning to use children as instruments of achievement rather than to love children unconditionally regardless of their achievement. Even now, in low-tech ways, hyperparenting may lead to this excess. And insofar as the discussion of technology prompts us to reflect on our existing practices, it shows that these questions matter and are appropriate, these ethical questions, retrospectively, but also in imagining future scenarios.
Okay, thank you. It's already time, but I think we can take one more question maybe. Yeah, because I haven't got a chance to go to the people sitting in the back. So yes, that lady, please. Yeah.
Professor Sando, I'm Wu Tongyu from the School of Economics. And Professor Han just mentioned that the human image is constantly changing, and we have no right to prevent the further development of the human image. But when we look back at the ancient murals, we will find that those with 6 fingers and webbed feet are not people, but actually gods. I think that the development of human beings based on genetic engineering is not only limited to people who want to be better, but also people who want to be gods. Just like people have always wanted to fly. This dream called people wanting to be God is rooted in human genes, in my opinion. And as Adam and Eve failed to resist the allure of the apples, how can we resist the temptation of being the gods? Maybe for a while, but I think it can be forever. So how can we prevent the genetic engineering from progressing? Thank you.
Great. Okay. And I should say, if people do want okay, I'm up here. It's a great question. Haven't we always wanted to be like the gods? And it reminds me of a comment when people worried about genetic engineering said that genetic scientists were playing God. One of those scientists replied, "Well, if we don't play God, who will?" It is perhaps a universal longing to extend our powers of mastery and dominion over nature, including over human nature, without limit or bounds. It's a kind of Promethean ambition. And it's led to remarkable innovation and invention in agriculture, in technology, in industry, in medicine. In earlier centuries, if people had been told that one day we'll be able to perform surgery, opening the human body and intervening with human tools and skills to repair a heart or to replace a heart, that would have been seen like a godlike project. But at the same time, we've always had reminders of the distance, of our distance from godlike powers. And sometimes those reminders have come when we have fallen short in exerting our mastery and dominion. But other times we've been reminded of our humanity when we achieve or seem to be on the brink of achieving mastery and dominion over nature or over our children and ourselves, and we realize that we lose something if we exert so thoroughgoing an exercise of mastery and dominion and control and will and striving. We lose something. Today we've discussed some of the things that we lose, some of the values. In the classroom, we would lose much of the value associated with teaching and learning and struggling and failing and learning from our failures in writing creative papers of philosophy. In the case of parenting, we find that parents acting as if giving expression to the Promethean ambition to have the smartest children, the strongest children, the most competitively successful children they could possibly have. Even when parents succeed in molding their children for competitive success, they may notice that the child is subject to competitive pressures to such an extent that they lose sight of the intrinsic meaning and purpose of education because of all of that striving, all of that competition. And it's in those moments when we seem to be exercising the fullest mastery that we notice the social and human goods that may be sacrificed in the process. And that's what recalls us to our humanity. And the appreciation of our humanity is something we have to hold always in tension with the other side of ourselves that would remake nature as if we were gods. Thank you for a wonderful question and for a terrific discussion. And
Thank you again.
Thank you to Professor Han.
Yeah, thank you.
Professor Wang.
Thank you.